Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. It's TheSketchMonkey here. Now, the last couple of videos, we've had some fun. We've made some cool looking wagons or shooting brakes or whatever you want to call them. But in this video, we're going to have a look at the Mercedes AMG GT, the coupe version, not the weird four-door coupe, which they call it, which is not a coupe because a coupe is always two-door. I remember when this one came out with the press photos with the yellow car out in the Salt Lakes, and I thought it was such a beautiful design, and the proportions were just nuts. It's one of these cars that, if you think about the proportions of a rear-wheel drive, front engine, two-seater, two-door coupe, this is as extreme as it can be. I mean, the hood of this car is so long that you can play a game of tennis on the hood of the car, or if you park it in your house, you can use it as a dinner table. So with that said, that's going to be a challenge because I like to take the extremes and transform those into something else. So I want to completely redo the package of this car and have a look at this AMG GT right here. So what I want to do is make it into a mid-engine car. So that means we're not just going to copy the greenhouse like this. Let me show you what we could do if we were very lazy and didn't want to go into all the packaging of the car. We could take this car, let's copy the greenhouse and then just move it forward something like this, and look at the dude in here, he's wondering what the heck is going on here. Then we can make some perspective changes to this, just flatten it out a little bit like this, look at that, and then go back to the original layer right here, duplicate it, go into this magic wand or clone tool right here, and then copy this and just paint over this stuff right here, remove it. Very simple, a minute change to turn this into a mid-engine car. Well, that's the thing. This is what you would do if you really just want to have fun and play around with. But what I want to do, as I always want to do with my redesigns and my designs, car designs on this channel here, is to make it look proper. I want to make it look like it could actually be a Mercedes product coming out of the factory, from the factory floor out into the world, and that means we need to do a lot more than this. If we were to leave it like this, you can see that the proportions are all messed up, and there is a good reason for that. For example, we need to have a much larger greenhouse than this, and larger, we need to stretch this part back somewhere around here, so the C-pillar takes up a little bit more space going towards the rear, because you have to think about that you need to put an engine right here. So the big V8 engine that sits in the front, that now needs to be put back there. So the same space that is required in the front of the engine now needs to be required in the rear behind the passengers. And also, when you turn a car into a mid-engine car like this, you see that there is something off with the front here. That's because usually if you have a mid-engine car, the hood itself sits a lot lower than it does if you have a front-engine car, simply because you don't need to have the space for an engine in the front. It makes sense, it's logic. And also this part right here, the front graphics also sit lower to the ground. Same reason there, because we don't need a lot of cooling, the same amount of cooling in the front. Instead, what we need to do is move this intake here and these intakes. We're going to keep them in the front. We're going to make them less pronounced and instead move the main intake to this place right here. So create some sort of intake right here, and that also creates another challenge. Now we need to think about, how do we want this design of this air intake on the side, how do we want to design it graphically? Because it needs to flow well with the rest of the design. It needs to flow well with, for example, the curviness of the greenhouse right here. It needs to flow well with the side mirror, with the air intakes in the front, with the headlights. We can't make, for example, a Lamborghini Gallardo intake in the side there, because a sharp intake like that is just gonna mess up the overall continuity in the graphic design of the car. So that's another thing we need to think about. Now, when you do a mid-engine car, another thing that needs to change is the rear end right here. This is sticking out too far, so what I want to do is just shorten it a little bit. So just bring this piece in just a little bit closer to the rear axle, because essentially if you have a let me sketch it up for you so you can see what I'm talking about. Let's just make a new layer here so you can see it real quick. So now, if we have a, let's just sketch up a front engine car right here. Let's make it black, something like this very quickly. We have the baseline, we have the wheels out here, and then we have the base, and the greenhouse goes something like this, and then the hood up here, of course. All right, so here we go. This is my front engine car right here. So what needs to happen if you turn this into a mid-engine car? Not only do you need to move the greenhouse forward, obviously, you also, what happens is that the entire body is kind of sliding on top of the base line for the car, or the base of the car. It slides on the platform where the wheels are. So you not only do you have to move the greenhouse forward this way, like this, you also need to then move the rear end forward. So it's going to end a lot sooner like this, but at the same time, the front overhang now is usually a little bit longer if we have a mid-engine car. So these are some changes that needs to happen to the proportions of the car that maybe not everybody thinks about when they try to do redesigns like this or modifications like this. But it's very important to think about the package of the car and the proportions specifically. But you can keep the wheel base the same, but just slide everything forward. And of course, the greenhouse needs to slide a little bit longer than everything else forward in order to have the engine right here in the back. So with that said, let's jump back here to the AMG GT, and let's remove this ugly modification that we did right here. Go back to the original right there, and let's see how this now is going to turn out if we do this properly with everything that I just showed you. Well, here we are, guys. This is my redesign of the AMG GT, turning it into a extremely front engine car in the graphics and the proportions of the car, turning it into a mid-engine car. One of the biggest changes that has to happen is in the front graphics. We need to make this lower, as I talked about in the beginning. And also I did make the wheels just a little bit bigger, because I always think that production cars look a little bit weak when it comes to filling out the wheelhouses of the car. And you know, when you just increase it by an inch or two, it really makes a massive difference. And that's usually what happens if you look at concept cars on auto shows. They try to sell the idea to the public, and then the car comes out in production. The engineers has been all messing with the designs and with the happiness of the designers, and told them that we can't put 22s on there, we need to have 18-inch, which is probably a lot more economical for mass production, but it doesn't look as good as 20 or 21-inch wheels on a sports car like this. So that's why I usually always in my redesigns just increase the diameter of the wheels just a little bit to fill out the wheelhouse of the car. And as you can see, I did add the side intake here. I think this shape, it kind of works well with these shapes down here in the front as well, and also with the rest of the car. You can see we have a bit, it's a very curvy design. It's not a lot of sharp angles and corners on the AMG design language in general. If you look at the new E-Class, for example, it looks a little bit bloated even. It looks, maybe, I wouldn't call it fat, but it looks beefy without any definition. So it's like it needs to go through a cut period and just get a little bit more shredded, like the BMWs. But the BMWs, on the other hand, are almost a little bit too shredded right now, with a lot going on in the front, in the face of the car, and then the rest of the body is kind of loose and weird looking. Anyway, this is my redesign of the AMG GT, turning it from a front engine to a mid-engine. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm the TheSketchMonkey. Take care, and I will see you in the next video.